Good morning. I'm delighted to be hosting the latest episode of our Black Tech Talent Show. My name is Peggy Gondo. I am PwC UK's Chief Information Officer. As a reminder, this LinkedIn series is all about inspiring a new generation of Black technologists. We want to highlight the opportunities available, explore the challenges that can be experienced and perceived, and ultimately help creating a more inclusive and equal workforce. Today, a few days ahead of International Women's Day, I am delighted to be joined by a fantastic panel of Black women in tech to discuss why the diversity we see around us in the UK is so often not replicated in the tech sector. Women, and in particular Black women, are vastly underrepresented in the careers that we have chosen. So what impact has this had on my panel? Black women who have chosen and indeed made their careers in tech. What have they experienced on their way here? And how can we all listen and learn to improve the experience of diverse talent? Before we get into that conversation, I'm going to ask my guests to introduce themselves. So Amber, would you like to start?
Thank you. So my name's Amber. I learned how to code during the pandemic and now work as a front-end engineer. I've gone on to teach courses to get more women into tech and also like how to code with Code First Girls. And I've won multiple awards for this, and I co-host the Glowing in Tech podcast.
Yes.
I'm Rhoda Kasina. I'm a director in our digital audit practice, and I'm really excited to be here to just shine a light on technologists and women in technology. Digital audit is a specialist team in our audit practice that focuses on innovating in audit and also auditing our clients' technology.
Hi, I'm Temi Nelson. I'm the head of IT consultancy. I run a service that looks at using technology, choosing technology, and really helping technologists to keep people at the centre of technology at all times.
Brilliant. So a great panel, as you can see. A bit of context, I guess a recent piece of research from BCS, the Chartered Institute for IT, had a really big headline on this topic. Thousands of Black women missing from the IT industry. It said as many as 20,000 should be working in tech, but aren't. Now, technology job opportunities have increased rapidly in recent years, and they show no sign of slowing down. So something is stopping Black women from seeing technology as a sector where they're welcome. I'm wondering whether our panel could give us a little bit of insight as to why that might be. Rhoda, do you want to start?
Yeah, happy to start, Peggy. So from my own experience, I studied electrical engineering, but when it came to time to apply for jobs, I thought my chances were better off if I focused on a career in audit. And so in many ways, I ended up in a career in technology in the path that I took to run away from it. And so once I joined the firm as an auditor, my passion for technology shone through, and I was quickly earmarked and picked to join the specialist team. Yeah. So I think the perception of that hiring bias, or sometimes actual hiring bias, is what puts our Black technologists away from that career path.
It's almost self-selecting yourself out of that opportunity as well.
Yeah, and I'd say I had a similar experience to Rhoda. I actually wanted to be in music industry management and found that there was only one course that was all the way in Durham. I'm a very proud South Londoner and didn't want to go that far because I thought I'd be the only Black person. So I didn't go, which is really sad looking back. But for me, I ended up in technology because I was always looking at quick ways to do things that I didn't want to do. So it was very admin heavy, the role I went into. So I started to use technology and code and come up with solutions. And that's kind of how I started and then just grew from there. So yeah, very similar.
Yeah.
So mine's slightly different. I did an economics and accounting degree and decided that I wanted to get into software engineering when I found out that it was going to be a curriculum in school in terms of coding, and I didn't want the youngsters to outschool me when I was in the office. So it came from that. I was like, okay, cool, I'm going to learn how to code. Then I found a community, and I think that that's what made the biggest difference, like being part of a community, seeing that there are other women in this space and they're killing it. So joining that and being part of Coding Black Females, I saw other Black women in the space, and I realized that, I won't be I'm not the only Black woman to do it. I'm not the first Black woman in this space. And to lean on them for guidance and support really helped me a lot.
Yeah, I think there's really something interesting there about how you can kind of when we look forward, think about how do we make sure that it's very visible and present. So your experience of, well, I think I don't want to be on my own, to actually, no, I can see there's a community I can join, is quite a different sort of set of perceptions, and really quite important, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And that's why I'm really excited to be part of this forums. I mean, I wish there were more of that when we're coming up.
Yeah, I agree.
Excellent. And talking about sort of, I guess, then progressing your career is exactly that point. So you did all of then enter the workforce. You were then getting involved in technology. How about your experience of progression? So how did that feel as a black woman moving through your organisations, thinking about promotion opportunities, thinking about how do you get yourself in the right forums and being at the right table to be successful?
Yeah, I think for me personally, I think there were people who saw what I could do and what I was capable of more than I could. So certainly earlier on in my career. And then when I finally caught up and thought, actually, yeah, pretty awesome. What I realised that I felt I needed to do was be really open about it. So go to leadership and say, I want this. I think I'm capable of it, and if there's something missing, let's talk about that, and let me look at how I can develop and grow. And being able to be transparent about that, being vulnerable was also a big part of it, and being able to say, you know, I want it. Again, culturally, maybe that's not something that we would feel we needed to do. We want to be seen, as opposed to necessarily make us seen. But that was important to me, was to actually voice it and to say, actually, I want more.
Yeah.
And how do I do this? How do we do this together?
Yeah. And I think once you get to the table, Peggy, a lot of effort, at least in my experience, is expended in just trying to credentialize yourself again, you know, to say, no, I deserve to be here, look at what I've done. And so that can take away from the impact that you have.
Yeah.
When more of what you should do, you've made it, you're here, you're at the table. There's a reason your organization or the people around you think you're good enough to do it. And so focusing all your efforts on actually making a difference and contributing is really key.
Yeah, I think knowing you're enough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
You're enough.
Yeah, and I think, you know, the very fact, as you said, the fact you're sitting around those, having those conversations with people, you should own that space and be confident in it. And I think that, you know, to your point about how, you know, if someone's feeling that they can't get through the door, as it were, how do they get into those conversations? That was a really interesting take on actually, how do we help ourselves sort of say, well, actually, I want to. You know, it's something I want to do, and it's okay for me to express that vulnerability to say, how do I get in there? And to have those conversations with colleagues. Yeah,
and having those conversations with colleagues who've already got there and asking them about their journey. Again, an important part of it is people have already laid the foundation, even if they're not black females. There are people who have already laid that foundation of getting from one point to another. So having those conversations about how they did it, but not just that, how they felt as they were doing it, which is something that I always do. I have conversations with people in different positions, but I always ask, okay, what's going on for you in there? What's that voice saying? Is it saying great things all the time? Because whilst we can look at difference, actually the similarity is that we've all got a voice that might be telling us that, you know, we're not good enough or whatever it might be. So if we can align and have similarity there, then that takes that out of the room. Now it's about actually, I'm enough, I'm good enough, I can do this, and so on.
I love that you say that, because I'm always talking about feeling the fear and doing it anyway. That you don't have to wait until you feel good to take action on your goals. And sometimes I've definitely had the belief that, oh, I need to wait until I feel like great, or I feel confident in order to push through and like advocate for myself and reach out to people. But you don't. Like, there's sometimes I'm shaking and I'm writing my message like, hi, can we have a coffee chat? I think as simple as that, just to say having a coffee chat can be quite daunting to people, but you can just feel that anxiety, you can feel the fear, and just do it anyway, which is really powerful.
It's true. It's about acknowledging the feeling and saying, right, you're here, showing up as usual, right, and not letting that chatter then distract you from what you need to do. And I think some of it is also just that daunting feeling of, oh, another room where I'm going to be the only person who looks like me, and actually turning that around and thinking about, I'm a pioneer, you know, given the state of where we are in society, I am going to be one of the people who looks like me, but that's fine, because then we're paving the way for the rest who are coming behind us.
First versus only.
Yes,
right.
I think that's a really, really important way of thinking about it, and you know, and taking, as you say, looking at other people who may have broken down barriers or done different things and saying, well, how did they do that? I think those are both two really interesting ways of giving yourself permission.
Yes, absolutely.
To push on through and not to be fearful. wanted to pick on something you sort of referenced, which was that underlying feeling of am I good enough? The sort of the imposter syndrome, which I think lots of people experience. But is there anything that you have found as a black female coming through in a technology career that's particularly stood out in terms of that, how you handle imposter syndrome, whether that's something you've experienced?
Yeah, I mean, so personally, whilst there can be systemic reasons as to why, especially as black females, we feel the imposter syndrome. For me, it's self-mastery. So I invest as much time in talking to that voice and dealing with that voice and questioning the voice as much as I do learning technologies. So I listen to audiobooks, podcasts, things that just help me to think, okay, I have this belief. Is it real? Where's the evidence? If I start to write down the great things that I'm doing, actually, now I have something that says that I'm not an imposter.
Yeah.
So I believe that there are systemic reasons why, especially as I say, as black females, we may feel that way. But actually, there's also that voice that tells us, and that we can actually argue with it and shut it down.
Yeah, and it's facing it with facts,
Absolutely.
This is what I'm feeling, but is it true? And questioning all that voice in our head.
Yeah, something that really helps me is having a document. So I document my wins like every single month. Yeah. And so imposter syndrome also comes from the failure to internalize your own successes. And when I realized that, I figured that, okay, I need to write down what I'm doing. Sometimes it's so easy to like have a win and move on, but you can take out time to celebrate that, even if it's just the small things. Yeah. That's something that's definitely helps me. Especially in the context of learning how to code during the pandemic. I was so focused on, I haven't done this, like I haven't got this job and I don't know this technology, and people ask me questions I don't know the answer to, but I actually focus on, but I do know something. Yeah. I don't have all the answers, but I do have some answers. I think that's a really important, I mean, generally for progression, I think actually that getting comfortable with not knowing things as well as knowing them, and recognizing that there's if you can't know everything all of the time, nobody can. So there has to be a way of you teaching yourself that it's okay to have that sort of gap in knowledge, but to be able to deal with it and to be able to answer it appropriately and to bring in the right people into those conversations, I think and I think technology is an interesting one because so much of the content of what we talk about is quite technical. But whatever, so therefore actually it can feel like, if I can't get to that depth of technical knowledge, there's some kind of failure, but actually there'll be someone that does. Yeah. And you knowing that that's the right person to go to can equally be important.
I think one of the things around that imposter piece is that it's driven by comparison a lot of the time, not really necessarily looking at the differences that we bring. So again, I used to code and I don't code anymore. So if you were to we were in a room together and you were talking about coding, there might be a little part of me that thinks, I don't really know the detail of that, and what does that mean, and how does that relate to things? But there might be things, again, that from my perspective, that you wouldn't see. So that uniqueness, so, they say comparison is the thief of all joy, and it really is. So again, just knowing and believing you're enough, I think is part of, silencing some of that noise.
Yeah, and also recognizing that, like, I have so many examples of times that I've learned and just giving myself room to, you may not know this, but I can learn this. Yeah. And I feel like that's so powerful. Like, it's not permanent. I can always work on something.
And I think it's taking that feeling of when you're most confident, when you've done all those things, bottling up. And the expression someone used recently was that, bottle it up. And anytime you're feeling down, open, take a sip from it.
Yeah. Move on. I like that.
Yeah.
Being able to really recognise it, I think, is a real learning journey.
Yeah.
Because our lives are so fast-paced, right? Yeah. Like, technology has made the world super fast-paced. Yeah. So sometimes it can be hard for us to slow down and just recognise that what I did was absolutely incredible.
And I think there's also a piece interesting to get your take on in terms of, I guess, talking about the incredible. So how confident or comfortable have you all been in your careers in saying, yeah, I'm good and I deserve it, and, I'm going to shout about my successes to others? Can see some right the panel. Who would like to start?
I'm happy to start. So in my first proper role, it was a business internship, And it was a great example of the pals having a sponsor. I was not able to advocate for myself. I was like, I'm an intern, even though like my manager says I'm doing incredible things. Who am I going to voice this to? I don't want to come across as boastful, especially because I'm an intern. I felt like I was the bottom of the pile. So it was great to have my manager as my sponsor who would talk about me in various different rooms. Those people would come back to me and say, your name's being said in these kind of environments, in this context, and that helped me a lot because it made me realize, one, I need to learn how to do this for myself. I was very fortunate enough to have a manager that did that on my behalf. So I wouldn't say that's an easy thing to do, but if you have a manager or someone, a sponsor in the workplace, that's always a really good start.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think as you start up in your career, at least that was my experience. So you're known for something. So, there's a buzz. And if you're in a smaller sort of office, then everyone knows everyone and people can get to know about you. But if you're in a big organization where, your, reputation is just known among smaller people, it's really important to speak about your successes. It doesn't mean it's easy. I mean, I was brought up in Kenya, where a lot of value is placed on humility and, not coming across as boastful. And so just walking that journey of understanding, actually, what I'm doing, I'm not being boastful, I'm helping someone else understand what I'm good at. So then I can be involved in those projects that play to my strengths and the value I bring. And so really, again, it's back to talking to that voice in your head, you're boastful, and just saying, no, actually, the fact is I am not. I am talking about this because it's important for whatever reason it is.
Yeah, and I think so I identify with what both of the ladies have said, and I have had great allies and I've had great people who have made sure that my name is put in the fore. Again, to be an award winner, if you've not nominated yourself, that means others have seen you and have decided that they want to put you on that platform. But I've also been able to kind of really understand what I bring is just, all I'm doing is just telling the truth. That's it. I'm not embellishing. I'm just saying, okay, this is what I've done. This is how I did it. This is the impact that I've had, and try to really stay grounded in that. And then when the voice kicks in, just saying, we're just telling the truth, and that's it, and leave it at that. So, yeah.
I wanted to reflect before the webcast today. We were having a chat, and one of the things that came up was, Amber, you mentioned always feeling as a black woman you needed to work twice as hard to get that fact-based recognition. Do you want to maybe tell us a little bit about how that's played out?
Yeah, so I grew up with messages saying that, okay, in order to survive in this world, you need to work twice as hard as your white counterparts. And as a perfectionist, this caused me just to overwork a lot. And so it meant that I almost based my worth based on my ability to do things, but also put a lot of pressure on myself to not do what's expected of me, to always go above and beyond. But unfortunately, that's just not necessarily a sustainable way to live. So yeah, it's definitely transcended into how I approach work, but now I'm taking measures to stop that. But it's definitely a thing that a lot of people have grown up with.
Yeah, and I think similarly, I think that we can work twice as hard. So again, having conversations like this is additional, right? Having conversations in the workplace about maybe some of the biases that we see or things that aren't quite right or impact us negatively, and having to be brave enough to have those conversations. It's still a level of work.
Additional effort on you personally.
Absolutely. Wearing your hair the way you want to, or, showing up as yourself. While that may not appear to be work, is actually a whole conversation that you're going to have with yourself before you step out of the door into the workplace. So I think there is a level of extra work that we do, but again, it's also questioning whether we need to do it, and whether we can believe the organisations that we're in and their acceptance of us, and maybe putting more effort into that.
And I think that's really important because, we talk quite a lot in a number of organisations about bringing your whole self to work. That's something we want people to be able to do, because by bringing that, you get the diversity we talked about, you get the variety of opinions, you get to the kind of rich tapestry of that comes into the workplace and into the conversations you're having. but it does take effort to do that. Sometimes we all would just probably rather put on a very kind of sort of, plain face, and particularly when life outside of work can be quite, hard work in its own right. And I know, a number of you have got sort of families that you were talking about as well, in terms of trying to balance all of that and bring that together and make sure that you're being honest with yourself from an authenticity perspective, from a culture perspective, but also bringing that into work. I don't know whether anyone wants to pick up on that in terms of...
I think it's really about being comfortable in your skin, getting to the point where this is who I am, these are the things I like, this is what my circumstances, and being open with the teams that you work with. These are the things that are important to me, and I have a life outside of work. And these are the boundaries. And I think, really having that deal between your workplace and your home, where you're contributing, but you're also making room for what is important to you outside of work.
Yeah. And I think for me, so choosing PwC, because again, often we think that an organisation chooses us, but we choose an organisation as well. One of the first things I always look for is the values of the organisation and its alignment with me personally. And I look for certain words and I look for certain phrases that will make me feel like actually this is a place that I could thrive in. So making sure that that authenticity piece is there and that there are images that back that up is a really important thing to me personally.
And on the note about bringing your whole self, I remember being told that if you have braids in an interview, then you're probably not going to get the job. And so I remember panicking for, I think it was like some graduate assessment. I said, I've got braids in. And then I had a conversation with my friend. She was like, would you want to work for somewhere that didn't? The employee who had braids. And I was like, thank you for helping me take the power back. Because like you're saying,
4 hours.
Yeah.
Yes.
You take me 4 hours. But also, it's just a piece on, you also choose the company. It's a two-way interview process.
Exactly.
And so I felt like, I'm so grateful, I'll take whatever, but also I have an input too. So that was extremely helpful for me to learn.
Really good point. I'm conscious we've got a couple of questions just to get to. There's one here around picking up on where we started, I think, in terms of the non-tech background. So are there any sort of hints and tips you would share in particular, coming from a non-technologist background? We'll start with you, Amber, in terms of what did it take to make that transition and suddenly, decide, and also maybe what made you do it? Why did you suddenly roll your sleeves up and go, I want to be a coder?
Okay, so I'll be honest, the pandemic was a great time. It was a great time. I had just graduated, so it meant that I was not even fun employed, I was actually unemployed. And so it meant that a lot of people were available. And so I reached out to a lot of connections, I wanted a lot of help. I also wanted people to code with as well. So it's about forming communities, even in a virtual environment. So definitely leaning into communities, doing online courses. It takes, as we spoke about a bit before, about vulnerability to say, I don't know this, I need help. One thing that I always used to struggle with was asking for help, because I felt like I should have all the answers, and especially if I have Google, then I should just rely on Google, but definitely reaching out to people. And I always say apply for jobs a bit too early, just so you can I like to use a job interview as a learning experience. So I went through a lot of interviews where my answer was, I'm not too sure about that, but I'll definitely learn more about this. And I would just note down the questions that I'm asked, so it made me stronger for my next one. As much as that does sound easy, but it took a lot of emotional labor, and because I was like, I'm being rejected all the time, there's a big learning curve. But leaning into those communities, especially with women that looks like me, it helps to know that it's possible. It may not happen in my time, but doesn't mean it didn't happen in time. So
And I would say, just really ask for help. I can genuinely say, whenever I've asked for help from anyone, in terms of progression or opportunities, I have always got that help. I think just reaching out and doing that.
And I think that the culture at PwC, I think that's a massive part of it. I think I've been told no once by someone, and I remember it because it was like, I don't understand. What do you mean? No? But I agree. Asking for help. I have people reach out to me on LinkedIn in different places, and they just ask for help. And I'm always so impressed by their ability to do that, because actually that is vulnerability, but as a result of it, you're probably going to get the help.
Yeah.
So yeah, I definitely agree with that.
Yeah.
And in terms, I guess, of what organisations can do, we touched then on the culture of PwC, but I guess more generally, how can we really enable, we think about that statistic at the beginning, 20,000 black women who, for whatever reason, haven't entered this workforce. How can we make sure that people, really understand the opportunities? It's a great career, but also what could we do organisationally to make this easier for people to find their way?
So I think leadership has a responsibility to look around every room they go in. Every room they're in, they should be looking for a Temi, a Rhoda, an Amber. They should be looking for a Peggy. They should be looking for diversity. So to me, I always think about it as a wedding. You go to a wedding, the best weddings are the ones where the music's playing and it's a variety. It's 80s rock, it's hip hop, it's, K-pop, it's everything. And those are the best events where you have this melting pot of people all on the dance floor. The person who's holding up the wall, getting up, saying, okay, this is my song, off and doing it.
Yeah.
It's that melting pot, but looking at that for every room that people go into, and where there isn't somebody, there isn't a Temi or a Rhoda or whoever, looking for the opportunity to pull them in, and just being really conscious of that. So first optically, and then looking at that mix at the other levels, but optically first. And then taking it from there. That's my personal view.
Yeah, and I think just picking up on that optical point, I mean, if I asked each of us to just close our eyes and think of a product launch, tech product launch, for any of the big tech companies, who is that person standing on stage? It's probably a white male wearing a T-shirt or a polo neck. And so thinking about having different images, organizations just putting a spotlight and shining a spotlight on the diverse people that they have in their teams and reflecting that is really important. I think just the latest one is if we think about, GPT and, the company there, the CTO who's in charge is a woman. A lot of the press has been around the CEO and everything, but the more we can just bring
profile and bring people to the forefront.
Yeah, mine's definitely have a bigger focus on inclusion. It's one thing to get diverse people into that room, but you want to make sure that they feel as included in their teams as possible. Big thing that I've been looking at is psychological safety. So creating an environment in the workplace where you feel able to challenge, to fail, and just know that you're going to be supported in that. I think that makes a huge difference.
Yeah, definitely.
Excellent. All right, so looking at the time, I think we probably need to start to wrap up. Is there any kind of final thought from each of you as to what you'd like people to take away from today's conversation?
Yeah, I love technology. I love being in technology. Like Rhoda, I was getting away from something else that I didn't think I could be in and ended up here, and it's the right place. To be a technologist isn't only being a coder. It is, if you're the person who organises the events, maybe you're a project manager. If you're the person who's always asking why, maybe you're the analyst. There are lots of roles within technology that people can inhabit using the skills they've got already. So to not discount, to take the time to look at their skills, their strengths, and be able to see how they can map them to maybe a technology role. But I love technology, would love to see more diversity within technology, especially black women.
Yeah. I'm passionate about technology, and I just think for anyone out there, if you're passionate about something, forget about the perceived barriers and just, do it afraid, and come in. There's so many opportunities, and it's a fantastic career.
I love that. Definitely feel the fear and do it anyway.
Yeah.
Give yourself grace if it's taking you longer to get in or longer to progress than you wanted. And definitely just the message that you can do it.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you all very much. So thanks for joining us today. If you've liked what you've seen, and I hope you have, because it's been a really enjoyable conversation, you can go back and find all the earlier episodes, which were equally as good, on our YouTube page. Maybe not quite as good as this one, obviously. We've covered how and why you might want to get into technology. We've covered that why and how you might want to get in with and without a degree, and also the importance of finding a sponsor and a mentor, which came up again today. And then critically, how to actually go out and find that sponsor and mentor as well. So all of those are available for you. Please do get in touch. And thank you very much for your time.